Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Storm Season, Stories of Queensland Businesses. Today's webinar is the fourth in our Storm Season series, developed in partnership with Queensland Government, Department of Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning and RACQ Get Ready Queensland Week. My name is James Flaherty and I'm your facilitator for today. Today's webinar is a panel discussion format and we have secured experts to be with us today to pass on their knowledge and practical examples that you can use in your business to help you prepare for storm season. For today's panel, I'm delighted to welcome David Sparks, the Manager of Economic Development from the Department of State Development, and Travis Bell, SES Operations, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. Before we start, some quick tips to make sure we get the most out of today's session. We'll be on air for around 30 minutes, and following on from the presentation, everybody who's registered will receive an email which will contain a copy of the webinar recording and a link to additional information and resources that you can use in your business to prepare for storm season. We'll also have a Q&A. Please do use the text box on screen to send questions through for Travis or David, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the session. Now, in Queensland, we all know that we're extremely fortunate. We live in by far the best possible place to live that there is, and sometimes that comes at a price. And in Queensland, when nature strikes, it does so in spectacular and often in an extreme way. And when nature does strike, it's often businesses that are in the firing line. Following the floods in 2011, CCIQ looked at the impact of the event on businesses and found that businesses impacted by the floods lost on average $589,000. They had to close for on average 8 days and took over 30 days to get back up and running to full capacity. So preparing for storm season is essential. Being able to mitigate problems, to plan for business interruption, and to get back on your feet is critical. And today's webinar will give you the tips that you need to prepare and protect your business as we head into storm season. So David, first question for you, if I may. What are the common problems you have seen businesses encounter that most people don't think of when they're preparing for a disaster?
Well, the first thing is that there's just so many issues to deal with in what is often a short space of time. If you listed off the things that you'd expect to happen, you'd end up with a pretty long list in a pretty short order. And they're all important things, and they all have to be done now. So the first unexpected thing is that I have to make so many decisions so quickly that are just really important to the future of my business. The second is impacts on mental health, and it's related to the next one, which is just how long it takes to recover. And people can deal with a crisis that doesn't go for terribly long, but when things still aren't right, you said 30 days. If things aren't right at the end of the month or at the end of 6 months, sometimes it's still suffering. Then that really is really starts to get you down, and it can get your staff down as well. And often it's not just a business affected, of course, it's people's homes as well. The other thing is people sometimes don't expect that their customers or their suppliers are going to get cut off. They might be high and dry themselves, and then suddenly no one's buying anything from them because their key customers are out of business for the next few weeks, or their suppliers just can't supply them with that product anymore. The other key problem is insurance might not cover that specific thing that's happened to them. So, the classic one that's happened in recent flood events is backflow through drains, and some insurance companies just didn't cover that. Flooding, stormwater damage, all those sorts of things. People have been clued up to that, but backflow through drains, it wasn't specifically covered. The other thing is the basement or down the car park is a great place to put all sorts of things that we don't like to look at, like electrical things, your computer storage for different chemicals or records or all sorts of things, noisy equipment. It's a great place to put them out of the way and out of sight, out of mind, but it's the first thing that's hit. And so a lot of people lost things which took an enormous amount of time to fix. If your main electrical circuits and everything are down and are flood affected, then people can't get in to test equipment to see if it's working. And so, you don't even know what the extent of the damage is, for a long time until your electricity is hooked up again. The other one is that, everything might be okay now, but you might be out of the flood zone, but your employees might either be affected themselves or just a bit frightened to go to work because they're unsure of the roads. They're unsure if the worst of it is actually over. And so, I've had businesses call me up and say, look, I know they can get to work, but they just don't want to come. What can I do? And I said, well, you just have to be understanding and encouraging. But people don't expect that. The other things is, if a flood's coming through, then often for a very good reason, the electricity for a number of blocks will be switched off. It's a precaution. It helps save a lot of damage and risk to people. And so you can actually not be inundated. You go back to your place of work, try to switch the light on, and nothing happens because the electricity's been turned off, even though you're high and dry. Another thing, a crime scene. So sometimes, unfortunately, people quite sadly are lost, or people have died, and we haven't been able to find them. So in those cases, and we know that happened with Grantham back in 2011, there was a crime scene around a very large area, and businesses in that crime scene just could not get in to see what their businesses happened to their businesses or check equipment, and those things are not negotiable, and for good reason. And I guess the other thing that might happen unexpectedly is you might have a good arrangement with your customer. We've had businesses who've talked to us about good arrangements with mining companies, for example. They understand that if there's a lot of rain or a cyclone, things shut down for a few weeks at times, sometimes. But the people who hire their equipment, they aren't so understanding. They every day that it's out on your site, they'll be charging you for it, and they might not be quite so understanding if it's affected by flooding or a cyclone too. So there's little things like that, and I could list things like this forever, but they're the main ones that we've come across.
And I guess above all else, that really does highlight the need for having a plan. You can't necessarily control what happens with nature and with storm season, but if you just look at the number of variables there that David's listed, to try and control the elements that you can control within your business is essential. Travis, we can't plan for storm season to fully mitigate the risks, and it is inevitable that sometimes things will go wrong. So when that happens, what support can the SES provide in those instances?
Yeah, sure, James. I suppose the useful starting point is to understand that the SES in Queensland is an organisation made up of around about 6,000 volunteers. We're part of the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, and we work together with pretty much the whole community. So we work with local governments, we work with state government departments, we work with businesses and groups like QCCI as well, to try to really make the whole community better able to prevent, prepare, respond and recover, PPRR. They're the four elements of resilience. Now, a lot of our work is done on the prevention elements. We spend a lot of our time and energy talking to communities, talking to schools, talking to pretty much any opportunity we can, frankly, to encourage people to do what they can to prepare ahead of storm season and ahead of severe weather. Now, when it comes to responding, the SES all over Queensland has one phone number to call, 132 500 for SES response. Of course, people will always call 000 in a life-threatening emergency. But the sort of things that the SES will respond to, it's important to understand that our focus is on domestic and residential property. Our job is really to help people affected by storm and severe weather damage to stay in their own homes. So typically we're going to be helping families with a damaged roof or with windows that have been blown in from hail, with the goal of helping them to get their lives back to normal before the storm or disaster happened, so that the kids can go to school, so that your employees can get up tomorrow morning and go to work as normal, and to really help the community from that family and from that domestic basis to get back on track and to respond after a disaster.
And David, in terms of getting businesses ready and businesses trying to mitigate those issues you put forward, what are the different strategies that you've seen businesses put in place to prepare for storm season and prepare for disasters?
Yeah, a lot of businesses have learnt from previous disasters and probably learnt the hard way. But there's lots of things that you can do to minimise the risk. So simple things like identifying equipment that's at risk. Maybe it's inside an area that gets flooded. Sometimes your site, part of it's in the flood area and so part of it's out of it. So putting equipment up higher. It could be about putting up barriers. I know there's a store in Bundaberg that's put up barriers which would stop a low-level flood and certainly slow down a larger flood, just giving them a bit more time to move stock and to move it up higher or move it out of the store. Some businesses, I guess, they're lucky. They're larger businesses and they can afford it. They've got different sites, and so if storm season's coming, or if there's a cyclone in the way, or a flood that's on its way, then they shift things to different sites so that their stock or their equipment is away from harm's way. Supplier arrangements is a big one. It's always important to have more than one supplier for those business critical items. It doesn't mean that you have to buy half and half from each supplier, but just make sure that you've got more than one supplier and that they're both capable of supplying you. Some businesses actually change suppliers, and they've looked around and they've said, well, you might have a good price or you might have the quality, but you kind of let me down last time there was a bit of a problem. So they've actually looked at their suppliers and say, well, what are your risk management strategies? How do you deal with these sorts of things? Because I want to stay in business, and you're going to be part of that. So they've found suppliers who are actually better prepared for risk themselves. Sometimes it's managing inventory. So some businesses have adopted the just-in-time thing. That means that they've got less stock on hand and less stock at risk. Others have said, well, the things that we buy, they're likely to be in short supply after this sort of thing, because in our experience, the supply lines get cut off and there's not much we can do about it. So they might actually buy more inventory in preparation. The other good things I've seen businesses do is they've just got good plans in place to make sure their people are safe. And we think about things when there's a flood or something, but people you just don't replace them very easily. And protecting their people is a high priority. And businesses who plan well for disasters actually think a lot about making sure their people are safe as well. And the very best businesses, it's not just about making sure they can come back to work, but they care so much about their staff that they make sure they're prepared in their own homes to look after their own homes when a disaster's on the way. So all of those things sort of add up to being prepared, and we've already heard how important that is. But the best preparation is actually to think about what might happen and be ready for it, and make sure that all the hard decisions are made, and you just have to put the plan into place when harm is on the way, rather than having to scurry around and hope that you remember everything.
I think that's great advice. And if we think back to that 30-day statistic I mentioned earlier, it's often a trap whenever people think they need to build a plan of putting it in the too hard basket and coming back to do it later on. But if you think about it, if a business on average cannot function or trade properly for 30 days, and you quantify that against your business and say, what would I do if I couldn't actively run my business for a month, it pretty puts it quickly into scale, the necessity to get on and do your plan. Travis, as we look through the slides here, one of the things that is apparent is that a lot of the businesses in question will be tenants within their premises. We found sort of feedback previously that this was often an issue. So if a landlord is either struggling to cope or can't provide much help, what can a business do when they're in a tenanted premise?
Look, I think that's a really, really fair point. There's going to be heading into a storm season, the general rule is that the better prepared and the better maintained a property is or premises are, the more likely they are to fare well when it comes to severe storms and severe weather. Now, if you're a tenant or you can't control effectively the maintenance of outside of your building, then it might tempt you to think there's not much you can do, but in actuality, there's actually quite a lot you can do, and there's actually a lot you should do. The outside of your building is probably only half of the story. If you are a tenant, if you're got centre management looking after you, if you've got landlord looking after the outside of the building, the first step, I suppose, is to make sure that they are aware of problems that you know about. It might be that you know that there's a spot in the roof that leaks. It might be that you know that there's a door that doesn't quite close properly or rattles when there's a lot of wind. making sure that you've reported all of these problems that you've identified in the premises, overhanging branches in the over the building, spots in the car park where water collects, where stormwater collects, or clogged drains, clogged gutters. These are all things that you should really be talking to your landlord and centre management about if you've identified them. That said, there may not be much that you can do yourself to make sure that they are doing those things, and it may become important later on, depending upon if the worst happens, that you have actually reported those problems. In terms of what you're going to do inside, the first step, I suppose, is to make sure that you've got good plans in place. David's already talked about some of the things you want to think about when it comes to storing materials and storing equipment. The temptation to have things on or down in the basement or down on the ground floor or out the back where they don't get in the way. That's something that you might want to reconsider if those things are critical to business. You want to, more than anything else, look after your employees. Business knows intrinsically, of course, that the best asset, the greatest asset you've got are going to be your people. Understanding their needs in storm season, knowing that, for example, if some employees have kids to pick up and there's severe weather on the way, they might need to get away early. It might be that after severe weather has impacted your community and your business has clean-up work to do, it might be that they too have damage to their homes that they need to address. So understanding their needs and understanding their ability to help when it comes to responding to severe weather is important. Keeping an eye on things and being aware of your risk is probably a really important element as well. Flood risk is something that a lot of work has been done at the local council level on around Queensland. There are some fantastic free resources that most councils provide that will let you know what your risk of flood is at your business. Now, there mightn't be anything you can do about that, given your business is where it is and the landlord looks after premises, things like that. But knowing what's happened previously, if, for example, you know that there's a flood level in your area that comes up so high on the wall, or if you know that there's a risk to the car park. I know there was a shopping centre in Brisbane that was famous for having a car park that when there was a lot of rain would go underwater. If you're new to an area, talk to tenants that have been there a while. Get to know what their history is. Get to know the spots, the trouble spots nearby. These are things that help you assess your risk going in. And when it comes to being prepared inside, you're going to see on the slides coming up some SES volunteers rolling out a roll of black builder's plastic. Stuff like that, having the materials inside your business right now, so that when on an idle Tuesday afternoon a hailstorm comes in and blows in your front windows, you've got the gear there on site ready to go that enable you to plaster up some windows, that enable you to put a tarp over the top of your computer equipment when there's a leaking roof. These are things that are going to make it so much easier for your business to get back up and running again on Monday.
Some great comments there, and particularly in and around your people and your employees. And don't forget, in the event of a sort of major storm event striking Queensland, CCIQ will make available our employer assistance line, and that allows you as businesses to phone in and to talk to our experts around what you can, shouldn't do in relation to your staff to make sure that you do the right thing by your employees. On the subject of employees, David, how best do you recommend getting employees involved in the planning and preparation for disasters? Because in many instances, it is the employees on the ground who really know the ins and outs of particular aspects of a business and what does and doesn't need to be done.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you know, a manager or an owner of a business gets used to being the expert and the person that you go to when you want to know something. But as you say, many employees know they're part of the business a lot better because that's where they are day in, day out. And the boss might have known about it when they were younger and they did that themselves. But things have changed. So how do you involve employees? Well, you probably don't tell them that you're going to do a strategic business planning day or something like that. You can make it more interesting and you can make it more engaging. And one of the best ways is just to start with a scenario. You know, we've run a scenario like this ourselves. We've said we've heard a cyclone's coming and it's probably going to hit us in about 3 days' time. What are we going to do? And you run through all the things you have to do to be prepared and all the things you'll do afterwards to get yourself back up on your feet again. And make sure you throw in some curly things too, things that are likely to happen. So you've got a couple of sales rep or a couple of staff at other sites or in other parts of the state doing different jobs, and you've got that person who usually does all these things off sick. They're not going to be available while this thing's happening, and someone else has to be responsible. You have to have backups for people. It's no use just having one person responsible. You need to have contingency plans because the boss's riverfront home might be the one that goes under. They're out of action, and so the second in charge has to take over for those things. The other thing is that when you involve all your employees, you start to get some gems that you just don't know yourself, because it could be that they know things. I mean, we heard Travis talking earlier about asking some locals. Well, it's a fair chance you've got some people who've been around for a long time employed in your business, and they may know the local area better than you, but they may have worked for other businesses that have either done things very well or not so well, and you can learn from both of those examples. So involve them, ask them questions, and give them responsibility for things, and agree to it. So that when a disaster is on the way and you have to act quickly, that all those hard decisions are made and people know what to do. So that cyclone is 3 days away or 2 days away, and you hand around the short written plan about what to do, and people look at it and they recognise it because that's what they've agreed to, and they look for their name and they see things against it that they knew about, that they're ready for, and then it's never good when these things happen, but it's much better if you're prepared and people know what to do, and it goes much more smoothly, and you get over it much more quickly.
Thanks, David. And Travis, not every business has employees. In many cases in Queensland, a lot of businesses are based at home or they have employees who work from home. Can the SES help if something happens to a home-based business?
Well, look, as I said, the SES, our focus when it comes to responding to severe weather is on helping families and helping people stay in their own homes. So I suppose in the first case, we're always really interested in helping everyone in the community, whether it be business, homeowners, industry groups, whatever, to help make the entire community more resilient. But when it comes to responding, that 132-500 phone number is the one that we encourage people to call when their homes or properties have been damaged or they need an SES response. Now, if your business is based at home, I suppose the important thing to recognise is that almost always when severe weather affects or damages a home, it's not going to be isolated to, or very rarely is it ever going to be isolated to just one tiny part of the house. More often than not, it's damage to the entire home. We're talking about needing to tarp the entire house or tarp part of a house. The SES, we're not going to just tarp everything but your home office. So look, let's be practical in that sense. That being said, there have been cases where people have called the SES for help to tarp their carport or to tarp their garden shed or to tarp their standalone business out in the back paddock. That's not really something that we're able to help with. But look, if you're ever in any doubt, that phone number 132-500, call them, discuss what the problem is, and you're going to get great guidance on what the SES are and aren't able to help you with. That being said, preparing ahead of time for a business that's inside your home or outside your home, preparing for your home and your business separately, the rules oftentimes are really, really quite similar. We're talking about good property maintenance. We're talking about clear gutters. We're talking about trimming overhanging branches. We're talking about having mobile phones charged. Keeping your mobile phone charged during storm season is really important because, again, that's the number more than likely you're going to be calling for help, whether it's 000 in a life-threatening emergency, whether it's your insurance company, whether it's the helplines that James mentioned for QCCI. That mobile phone is going to be your link to the outside world. And having an emergency kit in your home and in your business, These are things that really will stand you in good stead when it comes to responding during storm season.
And Travis, what resources are available from the SES that people can access for free?
Well, once again, it's not just resources from the SES. There are just so many really high-quality resources available from government and from partner organisations as well. There's a great resource on your screen right now, qld.gov.au/get ready. That's the RACQ Get Ready Queensland resource. Great place to start, great place to go through things. I mentioned before flood mapping services. Get onto your local council website. Chances are excellent that you're going to be able to find what you need really quickly and easily there. And they may also, I should point out, some local councils, like in Brisbane, offer residents warnings, SMS alerts, email alerts when severe weather is on its way. Great to look at that as well. That's a free resource in Brisbane. Some local councils provide that kind of thing as well. What else? www.disaster.qld.gov.au, another great resource. One of the most popular websites in Australia is the Bureau of Meteorology's weather radars. You probably know about those. www.bom.gov.au. You can watch weather moving in real time against where you're based and really get a very, very accurate idea of what severe weather is doing and where it's going to impact.
And David, from a similar sort of question from a business perspective, what resources are available to help businesses prepare from the department?
Well, the Queensland Government has a terrific business and industry portal, and it's got contributions from a number of different departments that all help business and industry. But if you go to that, which is www.business.qld.gov.au, it's got great sections there on risk management, and getting ready for disasters is just one kind of risk management. But in particular, it's got a great section there on disaster resilience and recovery, and a lot of different tips and tools in there about how to prepare and how to plan. And as we said earlier, one of the best things a business can do is be prepared. And but if you went to a lot of business owners, and if you went to me many years ago and said to me, "Oh, let's write a disaster management plan," I'd go, "Oh, where do I start?" And this site has a number of different tips in there and tools that help you get started and help you write really good plans quite simply, and help you to be as prepared as you possibly can.
Thanks very much, David. And Travis, the final question of today to you, and possibly the most important one of all, is if I'm interested, how do I go about joining the SES so I can help out?
Well, look, the SES is a volunteer-based organisation. We couldn't do what we do without the time that SES volunteers provide. There are about 6,000 of us around Queensland. I should say too, we couldn't do what we do without the support of employers. Most of our volunteers work for a living. They have jobs, and when it comes to responding to severe weather, it's the generosity and the community support of employers that really make that possible. So it's a community effort. Joining the SES, it's a really great step. I encourage anyone who's minded to do that to look at the website, emergencyqld.gov.au/SES. There's a website slide coming up in a moment. It is a big commitment, and it's not something practically that everyone can do. Now, what you can do is, if you're lucky enough to be one of those businesses with an SES volunteer on your staff, they are a great resource for you to be prepared in storm season, obviously, and any support that you can give them to respond to severe weather is, of course, facilitating the great work that we do everywhere. But if you want to help us this storm season, the best way to do it is to have your home, have your business prepared, and again, good property maintenance is what we're talking about there, and look at some of those resources I mentioned earlier. You'll be doing your part, and it goes a long way to making our job easier this storm season.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That wraps up today's webinar session. Thank you to our guests, David Sparks, Manager of Economic Development from the Department of State Development, and Travis Bell, SES Operations, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. On behalf of CCIQ, I'd like to thank our partners who have made our Storm Season series possible: the Queensland Government, Department of Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, and RACQ Get Ready Queensland. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for the last webinar in the storm season series, and that really focuses on how to manage your staff safely before, during and after a natural disaster. CCIQ's employer assistance expert Jason Wales will take you through the policies and procedures regarding emergency response, crisis management, employee benefits and workforce planning and community service leave in the event of a storm impacting on your business. Please also do visit the resources that you've seen on screen today. You can head to cciq.com.au/storm season to view a copy of the recordings of the previous webinars, to access the fact sheets that are available, and to find out more information about how you can go about preparing your business for storm season. On behalf of CCIQ, thank you to everybody who's joined us today, and we look forward to welcoming you on another webinar in the near future. Thank you.